How long are you going to be live for, Rabbi?
I have no idea. I don't know. Let's see how it goes.
All right. Can you give me a minute? Can I come back in like 5 minutes?
Of course.
My bad. My bad.
No, no, yeah, no problem, guys. Yeah, yeah. Anyways, talking about Neturei Karta. I was thinking about Neturei Karta today. I mean, I guess I'll mention this a few times in the lives just to sort of, I don't know, keep the conversation interesting. Most people don't know much about Neturei Karta. I guess I know a little more than most people. I mean, I davened by them in Muncie. There's a Neturei Karta show in Muncie. I think there's more than one in Yerushalayim. There's one in Mea Shearim. Whatever. I mean, I met David Weiss. I met Rav Moshe Beck, who I believe he's the Rav of David Weiss. David Weiss was the guy who went to Iran, and I mean, it was like an age denial conference, but not really, because they're not really. It's a whole thing. But I was really trying to think about. Well, anyways, one of the first times I met this guy, David Weiss, he gave me his card, Rabbi David Weiss, whatever. He gave me his card, and on the card it says, "Pray for the peaceful dismantlement of Israel." Interesting sentiment. You know, it's the peaceful dismantlement, right? I mean, Satmar also holds the same way that it should be peacefully dismantled versus, I guess, violently dismantled. Neturei Karta clearly is a lot more controversial than Satmar. Satmar, they've never marched alongside Palestinians, although they are very, very staunch anti-Zionists. Neturei Karta were the first one, not just to march along Palestinians, they actually sat on, they had a seat in the Palestinian Knesset. The big question is how they get that seat. Supposedly, they paid allegiance to Islam. They were teaching somewhat that a Jew could believe that Muhammad was a prophet and a messenger and still be a kosher Jew, which is an interesting question, right? I mean, what would be non-kosher about that, with the exception that you don't take the Quran literally and assume that the Torah is corrupted? But is it like this big of error to think that Muhammad is a final messenger or prophet? Probably not, right? I mean, from a halachic perspective, right? I mean, what halacha are you actually violating? The halacha to not look cool in the land of Israel by most Jews? I mean, look at the way they dress. I'm sure they don't care so much about what people think about their philosophy either. So I was thinking, what would it take for me to turn my back on Israel, right? And but I happen to have my Todat Zeut here. I mean, I'm an Israeli citizen. I lived in Israel many years, and I support it as a democracy. But I was thinking, what did it take for Neturei Karta to turn their back? And mind you, I think Neturei Karta predates the state. Perhaps not as an organization, but for sure as a philosophy. The understanding behind Neturei Karta is that firm people were in Israel before the state became a state. So why should they leave, right? Because most of these anti-Zionists, they live in the state of Israel. They just refuse to speak modern Hebrew. They do make the transactions in dollars and stuff like that. Like Theus is coming back. Like he went to, I don't know, buy a beer or something. Why John Wayne? Well, because he's badass. That's why. John freaking Wayne. He's like the cowboy James Bond. Anyways, so what would it take for someone to turn their back on Israel? Now, I'm pretty sure that if you'd asked Neturei Karta this, and I've never asked them or Yaakov Shapiro or like whatever, the Netorna guys, which are pretty much the same. I think Netorna, i.e. Torah True Jews, which is another organization, endorses perhaps the marching alongside Palestinians, which seems kind of wacky to me. But I'll tell you what, there was a law that they've already tried to pass twice in Israel. I know that Shas was behind it. And that law, which was the law that pissed me off the most, that if they would pass that law, I would become publicly anti-Israel. That's part of what I'm talking about here. Now, I support Israel, by the way, for practical reasons, for selfish reasons, but not for religious ones. But yeah, I mean, I perform conversions. I would convert someone who was anti-Zionist. I think it's stupid. To be anti the state as it exists today, I think it's silly, right? To be anti it from a secular perspective. From a religious perspective, I understand, right? From a secular perspective, what's the alternative, right? I mean, what's the alternative to Israel and that piece of land right now? Palestine. And I don't want the show to be about politics, by the way. I'm trying to keep it religious, but how the idea of Zionism applies to religious Jewry.
I think it'd be better for, this sounds comical, but it shouldn't be at all. But I think it'd be better if the Israelis moved to the United States and
Oh,
had
that's not a
decent.
reality. I mean, okay. So most Israelis are actually trying to move to the U.S. People from all over the world are dying to get to America. To assume that every Israeli has dual citizenship is not true. They always tell you that when you're in Israel, be careful like what girl starts hitting on you. There's a lot of girls who just sort of latch on to you just to get citizenship. This happens all the time. And guys, by the way. This happens in the Middle East in general. So ladies and men, beware. But yeah, it's a thing that Israelis want to leave Israel. The ones who want to stay are the ones who are idealistic, religious Zionists, people who actually make Aliyah. And truth be told, the vast majority of those leave also. The vast majority of people who make Aliyah leave Israel. Case in point, I made Aliyah as a religious Zionist. I left as a non-Zionist. But I mean, I go back every year. There's no actual halacha to live.
Really tough topic, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I don't know what's going to happen. No, but I was trying to think about groups like the Neturei Karta and what makes them to be anti-Israel, because there had to be, unless they were born into this ideology, there had to be the straw that broke the camel's back, right? There had to be something where they said, you know what, I can no longer support this state, whatever, and truth be told, the average person who's anti-Zionist from that perspective was born into the ideology. There aren't too many people who just become anti-Zionist like this. And most of these people who look ultra-Orthodox like this, they hold to this ideology like just like a Catholic takes the Eucharist and a Muslim, prostrates when he prays. Right? They're just anti-Israel because that's just the dynasty they happen to belong to. Not that Neturei Karta is a Hasidic group. They're actually Litvish. But yeah, it's their ideology. However, there was a law that they tried to pass twice already, that if they would pass this law, I would cease supporting the state of Israel, because not because I still don't think it's a great ally in the Middle East, but then it would begin to tarnish Judaism as a religion. It would begin to tarnish Torah every day it continued to exist. So I rather the state of Israel be burned to the ground than Torah be compromised. Right now, the Torah in Israel as it exists today has remained pretty much intact. Meaning the Rabbanut, although not the most impressive individuals out there, have done a decent job, not the best job, but a decent job in welcoming converts, in not showing the world that they're a bunch of bigots and racists, that it's not all blood and this and that. However, there was a law, like I said, it was endorsed by Shas, that they were going to make it that any convert, any person who converted to Judaism would not be eligible to make Aliyah. If that law would pass, they would solidify the idea that they're racist. That being Jewish is solely blood-based, and it would nullify the whole Jewish experiment. There's 3 cardinal sins in the Torah that God says that he specifically would destroy the Jewish people over. For some reason, people never teach this. It's when Israel as a whole starts to mistreat the almana, the yatum, and the ger, which is the almana is the widow, the yatum is the orphan, and the ger is the convert. Right when Israel, in this case collectively, it can't be done in more of a collective manner than it being voted into by the Knesset, if they would actually do that, they would nullify their whole purpose on this planet, which is essentially to lead people in the right direction. That's the purpose of Jews. Whether you want to call that proselytizing, I don't know who would come to the kosher belief in one God and not want to be Jewish, right? That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says that the reason we're in Gullus, the reason we're in exile, is in order to acquire converts. If Israel would ever outlaw converts from immigrating to Israel, I would become a staunch anti-Zionist. I'm an anti-Zionist not from a religious perspective, but not from a secular perspective. Because from that point, every day it continues to exist under the name of Israel, it would be tarnishing the true faith.